I was about to cycle over 300 kilometers alone through the occupied West Bank and document the reality of the occupation on the ground. A journey into the heart of the Palestinian territories, where I'd come face to face with Israeli settlers entrenching Israel's control.
Go to your country.
No.
Why?
Navigate unpredictable military checkpoints.
Can I go now?
Just move because we have something for security.
And ride through cities scarred by decades of conflict.
Somebody definitely just threw a rock at me.
To see firsthand how the occupation shapes every aspect of life for the millions living under it.
Those are not CCTV cameras, the big black things. Those fired tear gas and rubber bullets at people.
It'd take weeks, but this would become the most eye-opening experience of my life. And it wasn't only the ever-present shadow of the occupation that shaped this journey, it was the people I'd meet along the way. After 5 weeks of pedaling, I finally approached the Green Line, the 1949 Armistice Agreement boundary separating Israel from Palestine. Under international law, this is where Israel should end and Palestine begins. I was nervous about this crossing, and I kept thinking back to all the warning messages I'd received up until this point. The common theme: avoid the West Bank.
In the West Bank, there are parts that are fine, but if you take a wrong turn, or if I get a puncture at the wrong spot, I don't know, I just don't want to run into any trouble.
In a territory plagued by settler violence and militant attacks, my big worries were the wrong person here figuring out I'm a secular Jew myself, the reaction of the Israeli military and settlers to my filming, or local Palestinians mistaking me for an Israeli settler.
The worry is that I might get mistaken for an Israeli. I'm hoping that on this, it's going to be very obvious that I'm not from around here. I'm crossing the border now, this is it. I believe I'm now in Palestine. There was no security check coming in. The guard posts are all focused on the cars coming out. Someone's gone around here and crossed out all the Arabic writing on the signs. So that sign's been drawn over with Stars of David.
This wasn't the Palestine I thought I'd find.
It's definitely for people to take cover behind.
You see, I'd entered the West Bank from a crossing in the northeast. Now, the regions actually governed by Palestinians here are very fragmented, and almost all of the area I was currently cycling through was under Israeli control. So, expecting to see Palestinian towns, I passed Israeli settlement after Israeli settlement after Israeli settlement.
All the bus stops here have these concrete things in front of them, and my guess is that's in case someone comes by and tries to shoot people in the bus stop. Seems weird to have political posters on a military checkpoint, you know?
All illegal under international law, these settlements violate the Fourth Geneva Convention, which states that the occupying power shall not deport or transfer parts of its own civilian population into the territories it occupies. Now, a quick note about how the military occupation is structured. The Palestinian territories are made up of two separate entities: the Gaza Strip, with a population of 2 million, on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea. And you can find 2 videos on Gaza on my channel already. And the landlocked West Bank, home to 3 million Palestinians and 700,000 Israeli settlers. Israel has occupied the West Bank since the 1967 Six-Day War, when it captured the territory from Jordan, and has stationed soldiers here ever since. This capture was followed by an influx of Israeli settlers, mostly right-wing and religious Zionists who believe that this land should belong to the Jewish people and Israeli state. The West Bank is divided into 3 areas under this military occupation. In size order, Area C is totally controlled by Israel, making up over 60% of the West Bank. Area B is under mixed Palestinian civil and Israeli military control, and makes up 22% of the Palestinian territory. The remaining 18% is Area A, which is under the control of the Palestinian Authority, the governing Palestinian body in the West Bank.
This road is under Israeli Authority here, but this road, that's controlled by Palestinian authorities.
Israelis are prohibited from entering the Palestinian-administered Area A, while it is risky for Israelis to enter Area B when it comes to actual restrictions on movement. For Israelis, that is essentially it. For Palestinians, though, the list is long. Their movement is highly restricted within the West Bank and between the Palestinian territories and Israel by constantly changing checkpoints and barriers, and permission requirements from the authorities. Meaning I, as a foreigner, am granted more of a right to freedom of movement than a local Palestinian under the Israeli occupation. And while Israeli settlers are subject to Israeli civil law, Palestinians in the West Bank live under martial law and are deprived of their basic civil rights, whether that be free movement, freedom of expression, the right to assemble, and many more. For my first 100 kilometers in the West Bank, I barely met a single Palestinian local. Israelis are able to travel through the West Bank, north to south, east to west, without passing through a single Palestinian-administered area. The absence said everything about who controls this land and which voices get erased. For now, I was pedaling through Area C. And the landscape was changing, giving clues as to why this region is so strategically important. These hills are the high ground. As a result, in a military sense, Israel considers them to be vital in a potential future war with its neighbours and the Palestinians.
Behind me is the Jordan Valley, so that's actually below sea level down there, and that's where I've come up from.
Depending on who controls the West Bank, the hills form either a barrier or a potential staging ground in front of Israel's narrowest point, just 15 kilometers wide.
You might not be able to see because of the sun, but I'm going all the way over there and then over that ridge.
Israel's fear is that a hostile army could descend from these hills and split the country in two.
I can't believe it's taken me this long to see a Palestinian flag. That's the first one I've seen. Another one of those watchtowers behind me.
As evening turned to night, I'd cross between zones for the first time, moving from Area C to Area B.
There's no one on any of the checkpoints. It's really weird. Like here. I'm on my way through Huwara, which is a Palestinian town. Salam alaikum. But yeah, this is the first Palestinian town that I visited. So far, there's just been so many Israeli settlements.
Straddling the road between Nablus and Ramallah, Huwara is a flashpoint town that has seen a lot of violence and clashes between Israeli forces, settlers and Palestinians. In Area B, the military presence was far more noticeable.
It's like these are all soldiers in these cars. I'm a little bit nervous that I'll just get mistaken for an Israeli. That's my main worry.
I'd managed to organise filming inside an Israeli settlement, on the other side of Huwara. There, on a hilltop, is the settlement Har Bracha. And waiting to meet me at its entrance was Avraham, a settler who lived there.
I'm a bit worried about anyone seeing me come off that roundabout there, because I don't want them to know that I am staying on an illegal settlement here. How's it going?
Excellent. I hope
down.
your Shabbat was good. And we are heading up the Mount Gerizim, which is mentioned in the Bible, in the book of Deuteronomy and the book of Joshua, as the mountain of blessing, and that's the meaning of the name Har Bracha, which is mountain of blessing.
Right.
And our community of about 400 Jewish families is here on Har Bracha, and established about 40 or so years ago. לא, צריך פחות גלגל אחד, יהיה לו יותר קל. He's the security guy here.
Okay.
And I said, I got you. And he said, oh, what happened? He couldn't make it up by bike?
There are two kinds of settlements in the West Bank. Outposts are unauthorised settlements that are illegal even under Israeli law, as well as international law. They tend to be home to the most ideologically extreme settlers. Then there are settlements like Har Bracha, which are illegal under international law but are recognised by the Israeli state and so are legal under Israeli law. Excluding East Jerusalem, there are 224 outposts and 141 settlements in the West Bank. Har Bracha is home to around 3,000 settlers, whose presence here is fueled by religious and right-wing ideologies that have grown more and more powerful in Israel in recent years. Most of the residents here are either religious Zionists who believe the Jewish presence in the West Bank is fulfilling Jewish prophecies, or revisionist Zionists, sometimes less religious but still in favour of Israeli control of the Palestinian territories, and strongly against Palestinian statehood. If you're interested in learning more about the evolution of the different forms of Zionism, I have a video dedicated entirely to that on my channel. In Avraham's home, apart from some settler-related imagery on the walls and a gun above a wardrobe, things felt strangely normal. To begin with, we mostly just spoke about my ride and Avraham's many hobbies.
This isn't my main go-to shofar. My main go-to shofar is one that I bought. What I did is I straightened the end and I drilled a hole in it.
How'd you straighten the end of a horn?
Heat. With a lot of heat, it becomes a little bit flexible. This is actually the coolest part. So this is all by hand, and I actually think that this is my writing. It's not nearly as good as a lot of people that I know.
Really?
Yeah, this is amateur. You could tell anyone who knows Jewish calligraphy.
We had dinner together and still hadn't addressed the elephant in the room.
Eggplant, please.
Or should I say aubergine?
Aubergine would make me feel a lot more comfortable.
That's
Yeah,
what I want
thank
to
you.
make you feel at home. That's the 36er. And this is the 26 inch. And I just got a new tire for it. I ride it off-road. And the kids, 5 of them ride to certain levels. But 3 of them ride decently. 1 of them rides well.
The following day, though, he wanted to show me around the settlement. So I ended up on my bike, following him on a unicycle.
You're gonna get on with the facing a little bit down.
The very casual nature of this moment was a little unsettling.
We're gonna go on to this side. We're not in the UK anymore.
I worried that just being here, filming in Harbrach, let alone cycling and unicycling on occupied land, risked normalising something fundamentally wrong. But I also think it's important to show this reality, and the difference in privilege between Israelis and Palestinians in the West Bank, to truly understand how the occupation looks and operates. We stopped at a viewpoint overlooking the Palestinian city of Nablus.
What we see down here is the refugee camp known as Balata, adjacent to the city of Nablus. And there's another refugee camp further up in that direction, known as Askar. Up on the mountain in the distance, that's the community of Elon Mored, Jewish community. There are communities along the hilltops there. You can see over there. There's a tower. That is known as, just to give you an idea of how small this place is, that's known as the Three Seas Lookout. Why is it called Three Seas? Because on a very, very clear day, you could look north and you can see the Sea of Galilee. You could look to the south and to the east and you see the Dead Sea. And you look to the west and you can see the Mediterranean. So we don't have, there isn't really that much land here. It's a kind of a small place.
The Israeli settlements in the West Bank are useful tools for Israel to maintain control here. And the settlers see themselves as a line of defence, or offence, in a future war with the surrounding Arab countries and Palestinians. Even their geographical positioning reflects the power dynamic in the West Bank. Like most Israeli settlements, Harbrach sits on a hilltop, overlooking Palestinian communities in the valleys below. Within its confines, it's easy to forget where you are, but there are reminders along its boundaries, dotted with fortifications where soldiers and guards stand on constant watch.
Here is another lookout point. You can see all over this Palestinian town.
Shortly before I'd arrived here, shots had been fired across from the Palestinian towns on the surrounding hills. It's thought that the Lion's Den, a new Palestinian militant group based out of Nablus, the Palestinian city next door, was responsible.
Being here, I feel quite exposed because Harbrach is over here, and these are all Palestinian communities along here, and it has been known for shots to be fired occasionally across from the Palestinian communities here to where I am now in the sort of Israeli settlement area of Harbrach.
Another stark reminder of where I was. Israeli military jets roaring overhead. I would interview some of the settlers and workers here.
It's dangerous around here?
Yeah. Here, yeah.
I don't call it settling, I call it resettling. We're returning to where we were thousands of years ago.
But that will be in its own video. For now, on my last night in Harbrach, I was still wrestling with the ethics of even being here in the first place. Being here in Huwara, I feel a bit weird about it because on the one hand, everyone here is being really, really nice to me. On the other, they are all part of a system that I just cannot accept. It's hard to square those two things when I'm hanging out with someone here, and then I'm reminded of what this place stands for. Regardless of how nice to me anyone here is, they're still part of a system that's hurting a lot of people. I wouldn't be stopping in a settlement again. I made sure that my next stop would be in a Palestinian city, where I could document Palestinian voices too. From here, I'd follow the infamous Route 60 to Ramallah, Palestine's administrative capital, and then on to Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and Hebron. I'd been warned that this was a particularly dangerous road, so I was on edge. I'm just heading to a junction at the exit from Huwara. And this junction is where an A zone, a B zone, and a C zone all meet. So these are the kind of parts that I'm more nervous about, because if I'm seen coming out of a C zone, which is an Israeli zone, especially where there's a lot of settlements, then people coming from the A zone over there might mistake me for someone who lives here. And that's basically where I'm worried that problems might arise, is if I'm mistaken for a settler.
Hi. Hello.
Man, so much military here.
I'm now in Huwara, which is a Palestinian town, but it's controlled by Israeli authorities because there's a road going through it that lots of Israelis use. And so this is a B zone, mixed control.
This town is one of a few places in the West Bank where Israeli settlers and Palestinians directly meet. And 3 months after I was cycling here, 2 brothers from Huwara were shot and killed by a Hamas militant on this road going through the town. Settlers from the surrounding hilltops then took it upon themselves to exact revenge.
A deadly and dreadful rampage by Israeli settlers through a Palestinian town Sunday night.
1 Palestinian was killed, 350 injured. These kind of attacks are known as price tagging, where extremist settlers often target Palestinian civilians in what they claim is revenge for attacks on settlers. Israel's finance minister, a self-described fascist homophobe, then called for Huwara to be, quote, erased. Since that violence, Israel has built a bypass road that goes around the Palestinian town, but some settlers still insist on driving straight through it.
So there were soldiers in these last night.
The suspicious looks I was getting from locals here made sense, but left me feeling nervous. And I was frequently stopped by soldiers. Some to tell me to stop filming, others to ask what I was doing. Some of them weren't shy about sharing their very negative views of Palestinians.
Where you going, bro?
Saudi Arabia.
You are fucking crazy, man. Isma, look. Others Palestinian people, you know, the crazy people. You do something a lot of Jews doing here, they can see you and, you know, be careful.
appears to be another settlement up there. You can usually tell the difference pretty quickly. For one, most of the Israeli settlements are on top of hills, while a lot of Palestinian towns are also on top of hills, but they're also in the valleys.
The settlements are not only easy to spot on hilltops, but are even clear when taking a brief look at a map. The older Palestinian communities developed more organically, so the layouts of their roads and buildings look a lot more natural when you hover over them. Take a look at an Israeli settlement though, and the planning is much more meticulous, as these settlements were built from scratch. Today, the settlements are expanding fast, especially in the shadow of the war in Gaza. And as the Gaza Strip's population faces famine and what human rights groups increasingly call genocide at the hands of Israel's military, Israeli settlers continue to chip away at the Palestinian-controlled areas in the West Bank. In May 2025, Israel approved the largest expansion of West Bank settlements in over 30 years. Part of a pattern that looks set to continue and escalate, potentially towards full Israeli annexation of the West Bank. It was a boiling day, so I sought some shade in a local Palestinian car wash.
Shukran, Habibi. Thank you. I've got some shade here, which is really nice.
It was reassuring to find friendly faces here, but still, it was a stressful ride. I found myself checking over my shoulder and examining the reactions of people who spotted me to see if they seemed okay with my being here. At the same time, the landscape was beautiful, and it was approaching the end of the olive season, so locals were making the most of their last chance to harvest.
This guy's picking olives. It's that time of year.
These olive harvests, though, are often subject to attacks from some of the more extreme settlers, and access restrictions from the Israeli military, part of a strategy to make life untenable for Palestinians here.
Interesting that the cameras are not pointed towards the road. Like, this camera's not pointed towards the road, it's pointed towards the Palestinian towns around here.
I finally turned off the main road and crossed between the zones of control once again.
I've arrived in another Palestinian town. So how can I tell this is an area controlled mostly by Palestinian authorities? So firstly, there's no Israeli military presence here. And secondly, all of the number plates on the cars here are Palestinian rather than Israeli. Now, I've just entered what I believe might actually be an A zone. Behind me, this is the first Welcome to Palestine sign that I've seen on the entire trip so far, and it's on, of all places, a poster for a pizza shop. It actually feels much less tense here than in the mixed zones. I think because everyone can recognize that I'm not Israeli, because no Israeli would come to an A zone and cycle through it. So people have generally been less suspicious and a bit friendlier towards me here. And Assalamu alaikum.
What are you doing?
What am I doing? You speak English?
Yeah, I'm from America.
No way! Oh, cool. So I'm cycling to Saudi Arabia. Yeah.
That's far from me.
Yeah, you want to be in a video?
Yeah. Yes.
Hi guys.
Hi guys. Hello Norway.
From Palestine. Salam alaikum.
Do you want some water, cold water?
Yeah, actually, maybe I could fill this one. Thank you.
Yeah.
Shukran, thank you.
Where you came from, Jericho?
Huwara.
There is no problems over there?
It was okay, but then
They're throwing rocks on the soldier over here.
Really? Okay.
With a warning about rock throwing further up the road, I waited with Bashir for half an hour for things to cool off.
Shukran, thank you for the cola, Bashir.
Okay, you're welcome anytime.
Nice to meet you. See you.
Before it was time to cycle into Palestine's administrative capital.
I just stopped for a while to chat with a guy called Bashir. He gave me a Coke. He told me that up this road there've been people throwing rocks at cars, so I just want to be a little bit careful. Another big checkpoint, but not many people here. This is where Israeli people cannot enter.
At this interface between zones, things felt much more tense.
Somebody definitely just threw a rock at me. No one really at the security post either. I'm kind of surprised. Oh, okay, they've had rocks thrown there. So I've just arrived in Ramallah. This is the entrance to the city. So the police up here are Palestinian authorities rather than Israeli ones now. I'm a bit lost. The directions to the hostel are taking me to like this museum, which is not where I'm supposed to be going, so not sure where I should head. When I got into the city, I didn't feel super safe because someone threw a big rock at me, and then there were these people walking around in balaclavas and covering their faces, holding sticks and metal bars and stuff. So I think they might have been the ones who threw the rock at me. So I tried to like leave that area as quickly as I could. It's the place. Eco Hostel.
I'd made it to Ramallah. Both Israel and Palestine claim Jerusalem as their capitals. But Israel has had complete control over Jerusalem since, as part of the West Bank, it also captured East Jerusalem from Jordan in 1967 and annexed it in 1980. So Ramallah serves as Palestine's de facto administrative capital.
Ramallah is in Zone A, which means it's controlled by Palestinian security and civil authorities. So that means that when you're walking around, you won't see any Israeli soldiers, Israeli people, but you definitely won't see any of the soldiers. You'll only see Palestinian police officers.
Quick clarification, that is the day-to-day. There are still Israeli military operations and raids that take place here.
It's much more relaxed and less stressful when you get further inside the A zones compared to being on the interfaces. I think the kind of nerve-wracking parts and all of the moments where I felt the most tense have been when I'm crossing from a C zone to a B zone or a B zone to an A zone. The only times I get nervous now are when I meet someone new and we're talking about like what I'm doing and who they are and stuff, and then they ask to find me on YouTube or Facebook. The bit that makes me nervous is when I tell them my second name. Friedman is a Jewish last name, and so I get a bit nervous that they're going to ask, you know, are you Jewish? It's just a very recognizable last name.
On the advice of some Palestinian friends, I'd opted not to tell anyone here about my ethnic and cultural background. This isn't something I was comfortable with, and it would weigh on me a lot, but in the interests of safety, I took their advice. Another hallmark of the Palestinian communities in the West Bank. water tanks on rooftops. Israel controls almost all water resources in the occupied territories. Israeli settlers, sometimes living just a few hundred meters from Palestinians, enjoy unrestricted access to water. But Palestinians require permits to drill or deepen water wells and install water pumps in them. These are very often denied. There are around 180 Palestinian communities in the West Bank that have no connection to running water, and even in the towns and cities, the water supply can be cut off. So these tanks provide backup supplies dotting the roofs. Still, per person in the West Bank, on average, Palestinians consume just 73 litres of water a day, well below the World Health Organization's daily recommended minimum of 100 litres. Israeli settlers consume at least 4 times as much. But despite the looming shadow of the occupation, wandering around Ramallah, the atmosphere felt energetic and very welcoming.
Hello, welcome to Palestine.
This has all been a bit of an assault on the senses so far. It's so busy in town. I kind of just stumbled into this market, which is really, really cool and seems to go on for ages. A deep fried falafel.
Very, very good. Thank you. Shukran.
In his shop in the city, Mortaz told me a bit about Ramallah's status as de facto capital.
We love this city because it is the central city on the West Bank, 15 kilometers from Jerusalem, the city capital of Palestine.
Ramallah was officially the capital.
Officially capital, and it's very important city.
But there's a but.
All the people, all the Palestinians, they are looking someday to see East Jerusalem is the capital of Palestine.
So they would share half and half.
Yes, we are agree to live with the Israel people, and we looking to see the peace someday between the both of people. You know, our people here, Palestinian people, they need permission to go to Jerusalem. They need permission to go to work inside Israel or to visit Tel Aviv or Jaffa or Haifa or wherever. That's the problem. Too many checkpoints, and you know, it's very difficult to go from city to city with freedom.
There are around 900 checkpoints and barriers in the West Bank, making free movement for Palestinians impossible. And there's a growing consensus among human rights organisations that this system amounts to apartheid.
So here in Ramallah, there's a really big statue of Nelson Mandela in the middle of a square called Nelson Mandela Square. And the reason is that Palestinians respect him a lot because he used to talk about the Palestinian struggle while also talking about the struggle of black South Africans against apartheid.
Unlike in the B and C areas, here in Area A, there were symbols of Palestinian national identity everywhere, and reminders of the struggle against the Israeli occupation. Memorials to those killed by Israeli forces, considered martyrs by Palestinians, and street art depicting the occupation are scattered around the city. This is also where Yasser Arafat, who's viewed as the father of Palestinian nationalism, is buried. Arafat formed Fatah in the 1950s, a secular, nationalistic Palestinian paramilitary. This group carried out a guerrilla campaign against Israel. It eventually became the largest group in the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or PLO, an umbrella for various Palestinian political and militant groups. Arafat would become leader of the PLO, and the organization eventually began shifting to a diplomatic approach to achieve a two-state solution, a Palestinian state alongside an Israeli one in the 1980s.
Arafat publicly abandoned terrorism and accepted Israel's right to exist, for which many Islamic fundamentalists labeled him a traitor.
This culminated in the Oslo Accords, a series of peace agreements between Israel and Palestine. It was under this agreement that the Palestinian Authority, or PA, which now governs parts of the West Bank, was created.
After months of negotiations, Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and PLO leader Yasser Arafat finally put the Palestinian self-government agreement to paper.
Arafat became the PA's first president.
Yasser Arafat waited a lifetime for this, his inauguration as the first elected president of the Palestinian people.
The peace process, though, would collapse. Arafat would serve as Palestinian president until his death in 2004. Since Arafat's death, the PA has lost a lot of support from Palestinians, many of whom view it as corrupt, authoritarian, and a tool of the Israeli occupation. The cause of Arafat's death has been debated.
Peacemaker, hated as a terrorist and sometimes admired as a statesman. He was mysterious even in death because even now, they still are not saying exactly what killed him.
Rumours of assassination by the Israelis or a Palestinian political rival. Murder at the hands of someone wishing to steal the fortune he'd amassed. There were so many unanswered questions that his body was exhumed and examined. This investigation cited a sudden, mysterious blood disorder as the cause of his death. But many Palestinians believe he was poisoned. I was in Ramallah on the 11th of November, the anniversary of Arafat's death, so flowers had been laid at his tomb. But this is only meant to be Arafat's temporary resting place. The writing engraved on his tomb states that his body will be moved to Jerusalem should it ever return to Palestinian control. It reflects the cause Arafat championed. Disagreements over the status of Jerusalem were a key factor in the collapse of the Israel-Palestine peace process.
On my way here from Huwara, I spoke to some Israeli soldiers and I told them where I was going and they were like, why? And then they told me there was nothing to see here and that it's not worth going. Crazy.
I'd been in touch with Yusuf, a local who'd invited me to a birthday dinner for one of his friends.
So what's this stuff called?
We say for it, it's مسخن in Arabic.
مسخن, and Yusuf has invited me to this.
It's one of the traditional dishes in Palestine.
Cool, thank you, Yusuf.
I hope that you will enjoy it.
Yeah, oh, it looks so good.
Over some delicious food, the topic of the occupation came up a lot. And I also met someone, we'll call her Laila, who wanted to share some of her thoughts on record.
The last 5-6 months, the situation is not safe. Ramallah, when something happened in Jenin and Nablus, they strike. Because we all are the same community. We all Palestinians, so we feel it with each other. My neighbor has been killed by the Israeli occupation. They come to his home at 4 a.m. and they killed him with gun, and they say we made this by mistake and we don't know anything about what happened. My message to all people around the world that the Jewish religion is not the problem. The problem is the occupation. Stealing lands and say that it's for us. And you know that there's people are living here. They are from here. They didn't come from outside. So how you can say that it's for you? This is the most important thing about the fight between the Palestinian and the Israeli. I was born here and I love my country. When I feel that I live outside, maybe it's more comfortable, maybe there's a lot of money, but it's not about just having a big home or a comfortable life or money. It's about what you feel in your heart. So that's why we stay here. So people suffer here every day, but in the end they want to stay here because they don't have another choice. This is their homelands. This is their families live here. Their children, their mothers, fathers. It's a part of their history. So they can't leave.
Happy birthday to you.
Shukran. Thank you. Great. Thank you, Yusuf.
Thank you.
It's been great to meet you.
Inshallah. Hope to meet you again, inshallah, in the future. Habibi.
After 6 days in Ramallah, I packed up my bike and got ready to cross the Green Line for a second time, for the biggest milestone of the journey so far. A city caught between faiths and national identities, and at the heart of 3 major religions. Jerusalem was next.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm on my way out of Ramallah now. The traffic's been crazy. So, assalamu alaikum. What should have taken 10 minutes has taken about half an hour, 40 minutes.
At this section of the Green Line, marking the divide, was the West Bank Wall.
So this is the wall that divides Palestine and Israel. It looks like this has been burned a lot.
Construction of this wall started in 2002, during the Second Intifada, a Palestinian uprising against Israel. And it now stretches over 500 kilometers, with an additional 200 kilometers of fencing.
Assalamu alaikum. So I'm now at the border between Palestine and Israel, and it's pretty intense, the security here. There's lots of these guard towers and a huge wall dividing the two.
ID, yeah, sure.
That was the security. Here is a sign to Jerusalem. In fact, I think I'm in Jerusalem now. I'm just cycling along the wall. Yeah, it goes all the way back that way behind me.
Israel justifies this wall by pointing to the fact that it's reduced the number of attacks against Israelis. But for Palestinians, this wall represents apartheid. And it doesn't actually follow the Green Line boundary. Instead, 85% of it was built inside Palestinian territory, sometimes up to 20 kilometers beyond the border, effectively carving off more land for Israel from the West Bank. The International Court of Justice and the UN consider the construction of this wall to be illegal. And this site was a pretty disturbing first impression of what's supposed to be one of the holiest places on Earth. I'd crossed into Jerusalem, a city split into 2 halves, the now majority Jewish Israeli West Jerusalem and the majority Palestinian East Jerusalem. I'd spend 10 days here, learning about all the different faiths, history, and divisions that shape this city, before I begin the second half of my journey through the occupied Palestinian territories. In the south of the West Bank, I'd cycle to Bethlehem and Hebron, before pedaling back up to Jericho, my final stop in Palestine.